Hello everyone, it's Keith Mabbott here on behalf of the Street Soccer Foundation, and I'm delighted to be back on another podcast interview chat, and this time I've got the amazing Paul McCartney, MBA. So he gets this all the time. It's not the Paul McCartney, but it is actually the Paul McCartney because I've got him right here, but he gets it all the time. But I like the additional MBA because he has got an MBA. But Paul is the Managing Director of E-Business Coaching. He's one of 3 business made simple coaches in the UK actually, and he'll tell you how that came about in due course. But Paul, it's lovely to have you on the show. Really appreciate your time. I know I'm going to get a lot from this discussion. And if you want to just give a brief introduction to yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Really good to be here. Thanks for inviting me on. Yeah, bit about me. Brought up in Southeast London, went to school in Southeast London, left school with absolutely no qualifications whatsoever. I don't think I was ready to learn when I was at school, which is unbelievable. Accidentally got into media and was working for local newspapers, local magazines, and then heard a job advertised on the radio. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting because I've always liked music.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, selling radio, that sounds a bit sexy, a little bit different to print. So I went for it. And that was Invicta Radio, funny enough, down in Canterbury.
Wow.
In 1987. So a long time ago.
So people that, I mean, obviously all our Kent-based listeners and supporters and viewers, if you like, they'll be well aware, I'm sure. Well, the younger guys might not be, but Invicta Radio is a blast from the past for me, definitely. But it was a major local radio station, wasn't it? And
yes, it was
kind of like your Heart FM sort of thing. I think most people know that, obviously. But yeah, no, in that regard, then, I mean, it was that always then something for you then? Because you just touched upon really loosely and briefly there that you weren't really massively in to kind of your education, as it were, per se, and all of a sudden you're throwing yourself into selling radio space sort of stuff, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny, Keith, because when I was at school, I started off really well, things were going well. And then I kind of lost some focus in that last couple of years when I was at school. Got myself a job at a greengrocer store of all things and spent most of my time working rather than going to school, which I regret now. But thinking about it, that also formed me as a person. And I learned how important hard work is and being true to yourself, because it was something I really enjoyed. Now, I must have had something in me because my head of year recommended me for a job that somebody had written into the school about. And how he knew me, I don't know, because I've hardly ever been there. But yeah, I kind of fell into radio, which was probably the best career move of my life, because I spent 25 years in the industry, working for obviously Invicta at the start, but also LBC Radio in London. I was part of the launch team for Heart 106.2, worked for Saga when they had radio stations going. And Saga, funnily enough, were really good to me. I'd done quite a few qualifications through my time in radio, marketing qualifications. And they said, look, we're really happy with what you're doing, but we can't put your salary up anymore. Is there anything else we can do for you? And I said, well, I'd really like to do an MBA. And so I did the MBA over a 2-year period, which was probably the best thing I've ever done, not just from a business perspective, but also from the fact I learned about myself. I learned so much about myself during that 2 years, because I was holding down a job, had family life, and still had to do the distance learning and going up to the university once a quarter as well to do the exams and sessions that we had to do.
Yeah,
absolutely loved it.
Where did that commitment come from, though, Paul? Because like you've said about your education, and you sort of slightly disengaged, and you wasn't maybe quite sure about maybe what you wanted to do, and all of a sudden you're then known to the headmaster. I don't know how to take that, because that could be a good or a bad thing, but obviously it was a good thing for you in that regard. But then all of a sudden what you just described there, that's a hell of a commitment, and you're applying yourself accordingly. But where is that come? Have you got any kind of role models around you, any family or friends that impressed upon you so well?
No, I think there were 2 things that drove me. The first thing was I had a real love for the subject. I love learning about businesses. Secondly, I wanted to prove that I could do it. I wanted to prove something to myself. And I knew my grandparents were alive at the time. I knew it would make them really proud, and it did. And so I was driven by what other people thought of me, which I'm not so much now because I'm older. But yeah, it was proving that I could do it. And I think that was really important.
That's really interesting what you just said there, because I'm reading a book actually at the minute. I'll give him a plug, because if we tag him, he might, you never know, he might retweet it, Paul. But I'm reading a book by Ant Middleton about the fear bubble. But the point I want to raise in what you've just said is he talks about doing things for either ego or like pride. And I think it's a real distinct difference, because if you do it for ego to impress other people versus doing it for your own pride, that sense of motivation comes from such a different place for such a different achievement and outcome for that. And it's really, really interesting, because I think it would probably be fair to say that most, or certainly a lot of people, tend to do it to impress others. They'll go for a big run, or they do this project work, or they get a car or a house or a pool or whatever, often materialistic stuff. But whether it's achievements personally, socially, professionally, it's quite typically often so other people can see them and have a perception of them. I think that's probably fair to say. When you agree?
I would totally agree. And funny enough, I think it's what drives me today as a business coach, because having worked in radio, I work with a lot of local, relatively small advertisers, but I also work with the big national clients as well, like British Telecom and Central Office of Information, which was the government advertising. But my passion has always been to help small businesses, because if you can help a small business, you're helping a family. You're helping that guy to grow his business and get the life that he really wants. And that's very, very important. We have to remember that we don't live to work, we work to live. And so if you've got the right vision for your life as well as for your business, you can achieve so much, and it drives you as well. That's the thing.
Yeah, it really does. And again, just to react to what you're saying there, I mean, on a personal note, I mean, you may well be aware, because you're such a brilliant supporter of me and the foundation and the work that we do. But just last week, actually, I sort of put a note out there on my sort of socials and sort of said, like, I've done over sort of 600 miles, and come the end of the week, I was flat out. I was gone, Paul. But I was kind of in my mind. I said this to some of our team, and that, it's such a subtlety of rather than sort of say, I've got to get to Burnley as one example. And I live in Kent, as you know, in Kent to Burnley, that's like 5 hours, miles and miles away. But rather than sort of say, I've got to get up to Burnley for a meeting, hopefully get them on as a new partner, a new club to work with us. I was viewing it as, I get to go to Burnley. I've got the given opportunity. And I know it sounds maybe a bit wishy-washy, but it genuinely really helps. Like, psychologically, it's that purpose of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, And certainly at the very beginning of that car journey, when you talk about driving, I've taken it literally there, but you start off and you're like 10, 20 miles into like whatever, hundreds of miles. It's really hard to process that and get focused. Obviously, you've got to be really attended onto the road, but knowing that I was going there for a real reason, and to actually meet people, the community, get a feel for the community, talk about a program that can help the community, all of that. And then it helped that I was going to Sheffield the next day. But that versus rather than, I've got to get up to Burnley, it's a whole mindset shift that when I got there, I may not have been really on top of my game, but I'm knackered now. It's a 5-hour drive. I'm not really up for this anymore. And it could be a waste of a journey. So I think addressing what you've just said there is so important for anyone, young or old, any of our participants who are on our programs, business people out there, whether they're employees or running their own businesses. I think you're so right in what you've just said there.
And people who have a purpose, they have a much better chance of making their organization a success. I know what drives you, Keith, because we've had lots of conversations. Josephine, my wife, who runs Kent Communities Foundation, her. She knows, what drives her.
Yeah.
The fact is that she wants to give money out to a lot of charities and CICs across the county.
Yeah.
I think business owners who have a strong purpose, that's all they need. They have that strong purpose, but they still need to know how to run that business. But if they have a strong purpose, the money will come. If you're always chasing the pound note, that's going to come across. But if you've got a strong purpose and you're trying to help your prospective clients get from where they are now to where they want to be, you're onto a winner.
Yeah, definitely. And so we're coming back to you in your kind of journey path then. So obviously you've got into radio, and you touched upon the stations that you worked in and helped drive initially. But the way we introduced you, obviously, is one of the sort of top coaches in the country. And so in that regard, as a business coach, where was that transition, Paul, from like kind of in that radio sort of sphere going into then driving your own coaching business? Where was that kind of bridge?
The funny thing is that the transition came because I got out of radio and got into TV for a little while. I was working for ITM Productions in Gray's Inn Road. And I got headhunted by another TV company. Very, very quickly realised that this TV company was not quite what it said it was.
Right.
and it went bust very quickly. I thought, I've had enough of working for people. And I thought, I'm going to go out, I'm going to set up a business that's going to advise people on how they can use radio and how they can use video, which was relatively new 10 years ago, and how they can use video to promote their businesses. But more and more of my clients were saying to me, that's great, Paul, but can you help us in terms of, people within our business? How can we get the right people in? Or how can we position ourselves in the marketplace so that people come to us rather than our competition? Or how can we market ourselves more effectively? How can we get a sales process in place? And so I kind of evolved. My business is 10 years old on November the 24th, I think it is this year. So not far away. But it was
Next
only
week, Paul.
5.
Next week. Sorry, it's next week.
It is indeed. Yes, it's next week. But it was 6 years ago that I set up E-Business Coaching. So prior to that was GeForce Communications. E-Business Coaching kind of came about because it was what people wanted. And I'm not a business coach who will ask lots of questions and expect my clients to come out with the answers. I'm kind of the other end where I'm happy to give them some training and some guidance and some help in terms of how they actually make their business work better.
That's amazing. So in that regard, then, and what you're doing now, taking, I guess, our listeners onto that sort of next step in terms of what you're doing. You and I had a brief discussion before we went live, and obviously these are pre-recorded podcasts that, as you know, and we get these out at the end of the month. But we talked about a kind of key question for sort of, giving the best advice possible. And the question we've come up with to pose to you directly is, how can you ensure your business is achieving its true potential? It's a really important question, because I think I mean, I've been there as well, and I know lots of others like you could self, but lots of others across certainly the Kent community where I live, but just across the country as well, as I've got around through the academy program, that there's so many individuals out there at the top of the tree, if you like, and running businesses, and whether they're entrepreneurs and it's their own business or they've got to a directorship level, but it's quite lonely, isn't it? It's that classic kind of lonely at the top, and there's so much expectation and people's livelihoods, at risk. People's jobs dictate other people's outcomes to a degree. You talk about that television company that went bust. You've joined that in good faith, but ultimately you very quickly realized it wasn't quite what they presented to you, if you like, and all of a sudden they're not here anymore. So yeah. And then you're the cropper, essentially. So you then had to sort of deal with that situation as a reaction to that. So in that regard, with people right now out there thinking about what they're doing, why they're doing it, we've touched upon purpose, understanding their true value, their true kind of mission. But then beyond that, it's kind of next steps in the business itself and what they're involved in, whether they're working for it or driving it. As a team collective approach to that, it's a major question. Have you got a kind of real kind of a key advisory around what people can do to realize their true potential and the businesses?
Yeah, I think you have to recognize that your business is a machine, and it should run like a machine. And it's a machine that prints money. And that money is not just income, but it's profit as well. You have to be making a profit. I see so many businesses out there who are unprofitable.
Yeah.
The great thing about being a Business Made Simple coach is that they have this really fantastic analogy about a business being like an airplane. Now, an airplane can be a jumbo jet, or it can be a one-seater, very, very small aircraft. But the principles are still the same. The wings are going to get you off the ground. They're going to get you off the ground and into the air. So the wings for a business are the products and services that you offer.
Yeah.
Now, you have to make sure that those products and services are the products and services that your customers actually want. I think now is a really important time to revisit what it is that your customers really want, because the pandemic has changed so many things.
Yeah.
The other thing that you need to do is you need to take care of your sales and marketing. And in the analogy of the plane, sales is your right engine, marketing is your left engine. And so you have to make sure those engines are big enough and giving you enough thrust to move the plane forward. Because if you don't do that, then again, you're not going to keep in the air and the plane's going to crash. The third element, or fourth element, because I've talked about 3 now, is the fuselage, which is really the overhead. If you went to the airport and you saw a plane with a really huge body, tiny wings, tiny propellers, you're not going to get on that plane because it's going to crash. So keeping that overhead low is vitally important. And there's a difference in terms of cost and investment in a business. Look at your costs as often as you can and see what you can cut. The investment is always going to make you money back. So your people are normally an investment.
Yeah.
especially the salespeople that are out there. The other thing that you've got is the cockpit, which is where you're sitting as a business owner and you're steering your plane. But within that cockpit, the leadership part of the plane, you have to make sure that you have a really strong mission statement that people remember and they buy into. Because if they buy into it, that means you attract and retain the best staff. And that's essential for any business. You also need to have those systems and processes in place so that everything is done in your business in the way that you would want it to be done. One of the biggest objections I get from business owners on taking on people is that, yeah, but nobody can do it as well as me. That's your fault because you haven't written everything down. The final element, and I think this is one of the most important elements because it's the thing that makes most planes crash and most businesses crash, is fuel. If you run out of fuel, your plane is going to crash. Your fuel in your business is your cash flow. If your cash flow stops, you're dead because you don't have any money to keep the business running.
Yeah.
And cash flow can be improved in a whole number of ways, but the most effective and efficient way of doing it is making sure you've got your pricing right and that you're incentivizing early or on-time payments. If you can do that, it makes a huge difference because you've got money coming in.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with big companies, very often they'll keep you waiting. And you might be waiting 60, 90, sometimes 120 days. You incentivize them by saying, look, we'll give you a 20% discount for paying on time. And I don't mean 20% discount off your base rate. I mean, you increase your rate when you go in there because you know they're a big business.
Yeah.
You increase it by 25%, and then you reduce it for 20% for them paying on time. So even if they do pay late, you're being rewarded for it.
Yeah.
It's a really brave decision to make, but it's something that will really help in terms of cash flow.
Just in terms, they're amazing strategy points, and I'm going to put you on the spot if I may, Paul, forgive me, but just for the benefit of the charitable sector, because we as a charity, as you know, we're really keen to be of help to other charities as well, rather than just be a kind of independently driven charity and hope for support from the public and private sector, predominantly the private sector. But I think in terms of that incentivization is what I'm interested in. Could you give maybe a brief kind of idea around that in terms of if people are watching or coming across this or listening to it and they're actually involved in a charity, because they may feel slightly different positioning wise in terms of that incentivization, because they might see it as, well, we don't really have anything to sell. We're a charity, so ours is very much service driven, but of course, naturally, we do need cash to operate. So in terms of that incentivization, how could, I think in general terms for a business, commercial business, it's quite straightforward that they've obviously got products or services to offer at a cost, or as you've said, absolutely brilliantly, at an investment actually, so it shouldn't be seen as a cost.
Yeah.
But what do you mind me asking about that on a charity angle? What would be your kind of advice on that?
Absolutely. I think the key thing for a charity is firstly to have their mission statement really nailed so that people totally understand why that charity exists. The second thing they need to do is get their marketing right. So they need to make sure that the story that they have as to why their organization exists really resonates with the people that are likely to give money or give help. Now, one of the modules that I teach within Business Made Simple is StoryBrand, because Business Made Simple is owned by Donald Miller. StoryBrand is a great framework. And if you think of all of the big movies, you've always got a hero in the movie and you've always got a villain. And that hero is always trying to achieve something. And if he achieves something, the world's a better place. So what you have to do is look at those big movies. Now, take Star Wars, for instance. Luke Skywalker was the hero in Star Wars, but he was getting nowhere until a guide came into the picture. And that guide was Obi-Wan Kenobi, who started to give him advice as to how he could discover the Force and convinced him that he was a Jedi. Now, what you have to do as a business is you have to position yourself, or a charity is position yourself as the guide. You're the guide that's going to take either your client or your beneficiaries from where they are now to where you want them to be. In the charity world, that is vitally important, you know, because people have to understand why you exist. What are you doing? What's the social good that you're providing? You know, I talked about profit earlier on. Of course, charities don't make a profit, but they do in a way. Yeah. But the profit that they provide is social profit. It's getting homeless people off the streets. It's getting kids into environments where they can thrive. It's getting older people with Alzheimer's to, really start to not necessarily remember, but certainly have certain memories triggered.
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of profit, but it is a profit.
It's brilliant advice again, and you're so right. And I will say this. I mean, you obviously have absolutely helped us, Paul, and it was obviously a bit of a loaded question. You know what I'm like, I'm a nightmare, but I was a bit cheeky with that one. But it wasn't necessarily a self-centered, selfish question. But but I think the advice you've just given there is so valuable for the charitable sector, and we'll make sure that our friends, if you like, across the charity sector will get and see a copy of this interview, because it's so, you're so right in what you've said. I think it's exactly that. The why statement, and we're really big on that at Street Soccer. Because it matters. Because I think if you lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing, then how on earth can you expect the general public, or even your targeted audience within the general public, to actually want to follow and get on board and support you in your endeavor? Because if you don't even know, you're not really sure why you're doing it, but you're just ticking over and bobbing along and attending this or that and picking up a phone and making a call here or there, but going through the motions a little bit, I think that's a real unfortunate circumstance to occur. But I think if you really stay true to every day, I mean, literally, it has to be every day, certainly in the charity world, arguably across the board in the general commercial sector, every day you get up with a firm purpose as to why you're doing what you're doing. I think you cannot not benefit from that. You yourself as an individual, those people around you, it will emanate, it will go across the board. And it kind of goes back to that, what you said earlier back in the call, for me at least, where you say about, you really need to be true to yourself and your own values, because again, that's the key word again from this last few minutes, Paul, for me has been that investment piece. You invest in yourself as well as your business, as well as your charity. And that investment in yourself, you have to have the best version of yourself, to have the best version of your business, the best version of your charity. Then you and everyone around you that you care about clearly obviously benefits. So it's a brilliant piece of advice. I mean, in terms of what you're doing now then as a business coach, and kind of looking ahead for the immediate future, because I knew we would be able to get away with a whole chat without the word pandemic. I was desperate not to say it myself. You beat me to it, so that's 1-0 to Mabs. But what would you say, Paul? Like, what are you up to now, and where do you see things going immediate future wise? Like, in terms of what you've said coming out of the pandemic, but also looking ahead with what that future dictates. The world is changing so quickly, and we talk about the advancement of technology and all this stuff that's coming on. I mean, you may have seen just really recently, Facebook as one example, are looking at changing their name, and I think it's Meta, is it? And there's a whole dialogue around that, and why and what's going to happen and the repercussions of that. So as from you today and tomorrow, as it were, where are you at, would you say?
I think it's looking at what your clients really need, and looking at where you can help them the most. One of the things that I'm intending to do next year is to introduce a series of workshops, which are low price, 1-day workshops, where people can come along and they can learn, for instance, how to set up a sales funnel. You mentioned charities earlier on. A sales funnel for a charity would be a brilliant way to get donations, because what you do is, building on the story that I talked about earlier on, the story brand, you can create a really great landing page with a download that might be, in your case, Keith, 5 reasons why kids in tight town environments really need help. And then you can start to build that story. People come on, they get the download, they leave their name and address, and what you do then is you follow up with a automated email nurture campaign, so that you feed information through as to the work you're doing, how the kids are benefiting, and really starting to generate revenue for yourself that way. But it's about looking at what it is that your customers, or in your case, your beneficiaries, really need, and then doing stuff on the back of that to really match it.
I think that's definitely another key takeaway for me. I'm scribbling notes. You probably recognise I'm scribbling notes here. I feel like we're literally in a lesson here. You're teaching me the world and then some. But yeah, the storyboard angle is absolutely superb, and I love that. And I've wrote that and circled it actually on my notepad here, Paul. But I think that's a really, really genuine, solid piece of advice again for anyone. I think anyone again, and it aligns itself with this why statement piece as well. But that storyboard, as in that's how you're going to best engage people around you and those within your target audience. Future steps for you then, Paul, in terms of your own business, though, in terms of developing it out. I know you touched on the one-day workshops, but I mean, are you looking to expand your offering? Are you looking to increase your online presence? Get national even more so, or just stick to where you are? What does that look like for you?
I think one of the things that I have to do, and I've got to thank Ash Lawrence for this. I played golf with him at the weekend, and
Nice.
and I was saying to him, look, I've been looking for a coach to bring into my business, but I can't find anyone.
And you said that to Ash. That's
yeah. I said I can't find anyone that matches my values. I said, do you know any good business coaches out there that haven't got very much work?
And you were golfing with him,
and
as he lifted his golf club.
And he looked at me and he laughed, because he said, all the good ones are rushed off their feet, and all the poor ones, you don't want to employ them anyway. So he's absolutely right. So my plan is to launch these workshops, some group coaching programs, but also I want to develop an online platform where people can go and get the information they need. The MBA that I did was phenomenal. It gave me so much knowledge. It's incredible. But what I have to do is simplify that so that people can take it in, understand it, and give them, the tools that they need to actually move their businesses forward. Yeah. My view is, as a business coach, I'm quite unique in my field in that I don't charge a flat fee. Most coaches out there will charge you $1,500, $2,000 a month to come in and do your coaching sessions, and that would be it. Whereas I charge a much smaller retainer, usually around the £500-600 mark, and then a success fee every quarter based on achieving the client's objectives.
Yeah.
And that works really well, because clients then see that as me sharing the risk. I've got skin in the game, and they're quite happy to commit to it.
So how, on that then, I mean, there's your incentive. I mean, we talked about what your incentives are. What an amazing incentive that is. How can people get hold of you, Paul? We'll obviously drop them in when this goes live, but how can people best get in touch with you?
So they can either contact me through the website, which is ebusinesscoaching.co.uk, or they can email me, paul@ebusinesscoaching.co.uk. I've always replied to emails. I do discovery sessions. I do complimentary coaching sessions. So it doesn't even have to cost you anything. And one of the things that I am going to be launching, and I'll give you the link to this, because by the time this goes live, Keith, it'll be live, is a thing called My Business Report, where someone can go online, take 10-15 minutes to fill out a questionnaire, and they'll get a 60-page report through as to how they can improve the 6 areas of the business that I talked about.
That is amazing. When this does go live, it's obviously, as I say, it's going to be a 10-year anniversary.
It will be indeed. Yeah.
But no, Paul, honestly, on a serious, it's been amazing. Really, really insightful, educational. I knew it would be. There's so much more, and I know you've got so much expertise to offer, genuinely, and it's a real privilege to know you and have you on with us. And I just want to say thank you again for all your ongoing support of the Street Soccer Foundation. It really is, it does genuinely matter. And Josephine, please give her my best as well. And
absolutely, of course I will do.
Thank you for your time today, guys. This has been Paul McCartney today, the Paul McCartney, I'm going to add now, and I've obviously been Keith Mabbott on behalf of the foundation. Thank you so much for joining us again, Paul.
Thanks a lot, Keith. Good as always. Cheers.